This is my video introduction to Darkfield Lighting.
Before we get started on the actual video about Darkfield Lighting, we all understand perfectly well that everything to do with lighting, well, everything to do with everything, is governed by the laws of physics, and it does help to understand the physics. Now, I'm sure that our friend Sheldon Cooper could help with this using his whiteboard if we had a few hours to spare. I'm not sure that I could explain it in the way that he can, and I'm not sure that many people would be very interested in the detail even if I could. But we do need to understand how changes to the physical properties of the light affect the final result. And the obvious way of doing this, I think, because this is a video presentation, is to show you how it's done on video. Now, apologies in advance because the video camera that I'm using does not really do autofocus. Everything normally is on video is done fully manually. I've had to rely on autofocus. It doesn't really work. But forget that. What I'd like you to look at is how the lighting effect changes as we move the subject closer to and further away from the light source. That's what matters, because when you actually do these shots yourself, you'll see that even quite subtle small changes to positioning and distance have quite a dramatic effect. Just to make sense of this, the setup for this video bit is different from the setup in the actual video shoot, because for the actual shoot I didn't have enough space to do this setup. The light source here is 1 metre diameter. The piece of black wrap which is draped over it to provide the dark field effect is 30 centimetres wide. The subject here is on a bit of white reflective plastic which is 1 metre in length, and the light source is right up against the back edge of that sheet of plastic. So we start off with the subject right at the front, we move it right to the back so it's travelling a distance of 1 metre. Now, if I move the light source further back, in effect, because of the inverse square law, the blacked out area would become smaller as the distance increased, and this again would affect the lighting. I hope that makes sense, but of course if it doesn't, just ask questions in the thread.
Let's start off by showing you the setup, which will work for most people, but there'll be variations obviously according to circumstances. This is my big picture window. It goes full width of the room, and its sole purpose is to provide light to make the video possible, because obviously we need light to shoot a video. It's not going to affect the still photos in any way. I'm using flash, and the flash overwhelms ambient light. Moving on, this is an LED video light pointing up at the ceiling, and that is to provide a sort of steady, consistent light, again to help the video. The only reason I've got it is that I can't rely on daylight, because daylight, as we know, is variable. Here it is pointed at the ceiling, it reflects off of the ceiling and lights the scene. Moving on now, we have the camera tripod. It's quite a nice tripod actually. It doesn't even need to be this good, but you do need a steady support for your camera. It just isn't possible to do any form of precise lighting unless the camera's in a fixed position and you know it's not going to move between different experiments and shots. The golden rule applies to all types of photography where the lighting is controlled. The first thing to do is to position the subject. The second thing to do is to position the camera, and everything else comes after that. Moving on, here we have the camera. It's just an ordinary DSLR which also shoots video. I'm using it today to shoot both video and still. This is my Black & Decker workbench, very handy bit of kit, anything else will do the job. And sitting on top of that, because I needed more height than the workbench provides, I've simply stuck a stool. Again, you may not need to, individual circumstances will vary. Here you see it with the product on the top. Now, the product here is sitting on a shiny bit of black plastic. The bit of black plastic isn't actually going to be doing anything. It's just providing a base for the item to stand on. And it won't do anything because I'm shooting this from a heroic camera position. That is a position that's slightly below the level of the subject. So the camera's pointing up very slightly. That means that although there will be reflection on that bit of black plastic, we won't see it. But of course, if we took looking down shots, then a bit of black plastic or white plastic or whatever might be a very useful thing to have. This is our light source. It's a big softbox, much bigger than it needs to be, but it's what I happen to have, so I have to manage. And it's attached to a flash head. I use flash because I find it easier. I find it easier because it gives me more lighting control. But if you haven't got a softbox, you can use an ordinary flash head, flash gun, whatever, bounce it off of a white wall, same result. Slightly more fiddly, same result. If you haven't got a flash head either, then you can just use any light source as background. Now, on the Darkfield lighting that we did before, I deliberately made it as easy as I can and as inclusive as I could, so everybody could do it regardless of type of lighting. I used a computer monitor with a white background. That did the job, and you can use that for Darkfield lighting as well. It's going to be a bit more fiddly, but it will work. So whatever you've got, make use of it. But whatever you've got, you still got to address the basic problem that with Darkfield lighting, the whole of the light source is lighting. It goes through the subject, and that's what produces its unique result. And just to remind you of that result, very briefly, here's a picture of the same bottle of Smellies with Darkfield lighting, but we're going to do something entirely different now. And what we have to do is to block out the light that's directly behind the subject. Now, in the first time I did this, without the benefit of video, I just used a pair of trousers. It did the job. Anything will do the job as long as it blocks the light. This time round, I'm doing things the easier way because I'm sure you're all motivated enough to actually get the basics that make life easier. And the basic here is this stuff. A lot of people call it cinefoil. Cinefoil is the registered trade name of the manufacturer. Copies are not called cinefoil simply because that would be infringing trade names, trademarks. We use a generic term of black wrap. What it is, I don't know how well you can see here, but what it is basically just ultra thick cooking foil, but coated both sides with matte black. It's incredibly useful for all sorts of things. Do your research, you'll see what I mean. You can see what you can use it for. Anyway, I'm just using it in a very simple way. I'm using it to create a dark vertical strip that we're going to use for this Darkfield lighting shot. Now, all I'm going to do is put it on the softbox. Because I'm mean and poor, I hate wasting materials, and so whenever I possibly can, I don't cut black wrap. I leave it in one piece. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. For this simple shot, I can. So I simply drape it over the softbox. I let the rest of the roll just sit on the floor, and job done. It will be job done as long as it's wide enough. My guess is for this particular shot, it will be plenty wide enough. But I do plan to do another shot, which is a bit more demanding, and I'm guessing for that, I'll need a wider space. That's not a problem. That's a fairly typical example of Darkfield lighting, but it leaves us, of course, with the big limitation that because it's all transmitted light, there's no reflected light, therefore the labels coming out are completely dark, unacceptable. This bit here, completely dark, completely unacceptable. Same with the top, it's what it is. There's a way around it. Now, the principle of these lighting themes is we only ever use one light. so I'm not going to cheat as such. What I'm going to do, however, is make use of the ambient light that we're using, because we've got light coming through the window, we've got light coming in from, bouncing off the ceiling. So although in order to get complete control of my lighting, I'll set the camera shutter speed for the still photo at a 2/50th, which is the shortest it will go, which will make all of the ambient lighting completely irrelevant. For this purpose, I've simply used a longer exposure to capture some of the ambient light, and this is the result. Right, next thing. This is important because the effect you get depends very, very largely on the distance from the subject to the light. Now, I'll explain that as I go, but the first thing I'm going to do, pick up my bottle of smelly, otherwise I'll drop on the floor, move this little stool back a bit, as far as it will go, move this back a bit, and this time I'm going to stick my subject right at the back. I can't see from here whether it's dead square or not. I need to look through the camera to do that, but that's our approximate position, isn't it? We've now got much less distance. It could be far less. Before we move on to our other subject, which is a bit more challenging, particularly in such a tiny space as I have, I keep saying other people can produce good results much better than the ones I show in my tutorials, because they take more care and make more effort, and it pays. All that I try to do is to explain the principles. Now, some people have said, and I can't argue with them, that dark field lighting is quite difficult, or it can be quite difficult, certainly compared to bright field lighting, but talk photography members seem to manage to overcome these difficulties with no problems at all. Here's a shot taken by Paulie W, and as you can see, he's done a cracking job. I really can't fault it. He'd never done dark field lighting before, and he's shown what can be done. And here's another shot. This one is by Ryan B. It's a clever thermometer, I think. It's not the easiest subject, but he's done a first-class job on it. And it doesn't stop there, because here's another shot, again by Ryan B. And again, he's done what I think is an excellent job of it. These people can do it. That means that everybody can do it, because these members have approached it without any previous experience of dark field lighting. I've explained before, this lighting technique, dark field lighting, is really ideal for transparent and translucent subjects. However, let's do something really stupid. Let's be really ambitious. Let's try something that we really shouldn't try because it cannot possibly work. Let's try it with a solid, opaque subject where the light cannot pass through at all. Now, what I try to do when I set out these lighting challenges is I try to explain how we do things, what we can do, what we can't do. I did explain in the written version, the early part of this thread, that we use it for transparent and translucent subjects. Some people, however, don't read what I say, or they ignore what I say, and they do things differently. And that's great, because they show me up, and showing that other people, everybody in fact, can do better than I can, is the whole objective. Now, what this guy, the Admirable, did was he photographed a Lego character, which is opaque. It cannot work with that, can it? But he did, and it did work, and it worked beautifully. And it's up on screen now, you can see what I mean. He's done a cracking job. So I thought about this, and I thought, well, this guy showed me up, great. But hang on a moment, didn't I used to do this when I photographed, sometimes when I photographed flash heads and other, odd things like that? Yes, I did. And although my normal lighting technique would involve, for sort of advertising shots, that sort of thing, would involve half a dozen lights perhaps, and a lot of care and preparation, and I'd basically be creating diffuse specular highlights, and then doing all sorts of other bits and pieces to finish it off. It's actually, dark field lighting is actually a very valid technique, and a very simple one, and it cuts down dramatically the number of lights that you need. So, looking around, what can I find that I can actually demonstrate this with? Well, I don't know whether you worked it out or not, but I'm not someone who goes in for flashy gear. I don't buy new cameras, expensive lenses, flashy cars. I hate spending money basically. So looking around, this is one of my flash heads. Now, if we photograph this as a product, it won't work because products have to be spotlessly clean, brand new, beautiful condition, etc., etc., etc. I've had this, I don't know how long I've had it, it's a Smart Flash 3. It must be 12 years old and it's been used. So it's not perfect, therefore it won't photograph perfectly, but that doesn't matter for this purpose. So what I've done is I've stuck it here, we're going to light it. I've stuck a standard reflector on it. The standard reflector is actually from a completely different make of flash head. It's the wrong colour, doesn't matter. For our purpose, doesn't matter. So let's get on with lighting that. Now, I've had to make some other changes. It's physically too big from where the softbox was before, which was outside the room. Outside the room suited me because it gave me more working space, but it's what it is. So the softbox is now in the room. And also, before, if you remember, the softbox had a single strip of black wrap down it to create the width that we need. That is not going to work for this subject because this subject is, because the black wrap is 12 inches wide and this subject needs more. So let's fit the black wrap in position and we'll then make a start. It's simple. So let's just take a still shot and see what we've got. Well, that was a complete waste of time. I just haven't got the space. And as you can see from the result, it's absolutely awful. Let's see whether we can find another way around it. Well, I've had to move the camera as far back as I can. I've had to move the subject closer to the camera. What else have I done? Oh yes, I've had to cut another bit of black wrap, which really upsets me. But I think we're now there. We may, it's not going to be a perfect shot. I'm not trying to show you a perfect shot. Your job is to show me how much better you can do it. What I'm trying to show is the principles. So let's take a shot of that, see what we've got. Well, here's a shot, and it still doesn't work. But this is just too ambitious for the amount of space available. My apologies for all of the video, sound and editing mess-ups I've made in this video. I'm a complete beginner at video, and I'm learning as I go, but I'm a slow learner. As you can see from the final credits, I've done everything myself. I think that's it, and I think you'll be glad to hear that I've now stopped talking. Over to you, show the rest of the Talk Photography membership what can be done. I set out to show you the principles that allow you to add this lighting technique to your toolbox. Thanks for watching.